What are your most interesting roommate stories? I'm pretty sure I used to live with a hobbit. Man about 5 feet 1 inch, curly brown hair, constantly cheerful demeanor. Never wore shoes, inside or out. Literally slept on the floor in what can only be explained as a nest of blankets. Started a garden and encouraged me to eat his tomatoes all the time. Would bring home samosas and other goodies, always giving me half just because. He and his wife had a dream of living off the grid in a tiny home on a truck. I hope he's doing well. We met when we showed up for dorm room assignments our freshman year of college. Almost 50 years later, we're still the closest of friends. I recently attended his daughter's wedding. A grand affair, because he happens to be uber wealthy. At one point I found myself choking up, and it wasn't for the bride and groom, it was for John and me. How far we've come from that first awkward handshake a half-century ago. I once had a roommate for about 5 years who was literally, not figuratively, a fricking genius and also an insanely good person. She built a 3D printer from scratch in our living room before 3D printers were a thing anyone could purchase, and she did it just for lols. She also built a Hackintosh for me because I needed more bandwidth/space/whatever than what Apple Incorporated offered at the time, and still more than what Apple Incorporated offers today. She also made traditional bagels from scratch at least once per quarter in our kitchen, and the best mother fricking cheesecake I have ever tasted in my whole entire life, also from scratch. She is a unicorn, and we are still the best of friends, though we no longer live together. I have absolutely no regrets. If people still exchanged friendship bracelets or rings, the gems I would put on hers could be captured photogenically via satellites from deep space. This Earth, universe etc. doesn't deserve her. Not sure what dimension does, honestly. I am just proud to call her friend. What do I bring to our friendship? Not enough. That's for sure. First and foremost, upon our first meeting, I was honest and kind. It is amazing how often people discount and write off people because they don't fit an archetype. My dearest friend, the genius who is also an amazing baker, is one of the kindest people I have ever met. We are both word game nuts and I kick her ass in word games quite often. I have also helped her via my areas of expertise and we make each other laugh uproariously. We've been friends for about 15 years. Friends are the family you make for yourself, so choose wisely and with an open heart. Assume nothing about the people you meet. Instead, be patient and kind and you will eventually learn everything that truly matters about a person and also yourself. I think being kind is the easiest thing I have ever done. Even when it is the last thing I want to do in a moment. Kindness lasts longer than any of my other impulses/feelings/emotions. I wonder why. My roommate once created a whole new life form by leaving beans in the fridge until they molded so bad they became pure white. Then she got mad when I threw it away because she was going to use it later. Sounds like she needs some outside help. Or inside help. There are plenty, but one of my roommates used to sleepwalk and sleep talk almost every night and I was the only one who'd be awake whenever it would happen. I'd witness her cleaning our fridge, sealing our open bag of chips, and I'd hear her quote Shakespeare in her sleep. What made her go back to bed was me asking her to sleep and she'd look at me and close her eyes. Whenever I asked her if she recalled any of it, the answer was always no. My wife sleep talks really bad. When she was an ER registrar she tried checking me in multiple times in her sleep. I've woken up to questions like why is the sleeping bunny in the corner? And how did that basket start floating? Many times. The best one though was when she sat up, grabbed a bottle of water off the end table, reached her arm out straight over the edge of the bed, and dumped the entire bottle directly into her purse. When I asked what the hell just happened, all she replied was pesky ass purse fires and then laid back down. My roommate in college claimed he was involved with the mafia. He was constantly sweaty, was very jumpy, and always had a lot of cash in his car. He never was around on the weekends, and I never saw him drink. Strangest of all, is that he never once slept in his room. He was always on the couch by the door. He eventually told me that it was because if someone ever broke in looking for him, he wanted them to find him right away, so no one else would get hurt. I still don't know if he was telling the truth, but nonetheless I always locked my bedroom door at night. Oddly sweet of him. When he skipped out on rent, and moved while I was at work, he left behind some of the most interesting porn I've seen. He was into amputees and urine. He also vomited on the carpet, never cleaned it up and it ate through. I didn't get my deposit back. Was your roommate Brundlefly? My freshman year college roommate was a random pairing. This kid partied all night and slept all day, legit wouldn't wake up until 5 p.m. He goes MIA for like a week. I call my mom because I'm not sure he's even alive. She searches to see if he has been arrested. Before she can call me back the cops are knocking at our door and ask have you seen _ and I say no. Mom calls me back a few minutes later, He had been booked for robbery at a convenience store which was in our dorm building. He tried to hide in an air vent, he made the front page of the campus newspaper, was expelled, and I got the whole dorm to myself for the rest of the fall and spring semester. Dorm roommates freaking off, and getting the whole room to yourself is a best case scenario a lot of times. I spent over a year falling asleep to the angry, muffled, whisper but not really arguments between my roomie and his girlfriend. Just muffled enough that I couldn't understand what the problem was, but they were clearly not happy together. So I'd just lie in bed wondering, what's my duty of care here? Like they weren't violent with each other, and it wasn't like one person was terrorizing the other, it was just two young people in a consensual and mutual spiral of despair. My South Korean roommate in college played StarCraft, 2? Not sure, well into the night. We're talking like I'd be getting up to go to class and he'd be logging off. It cured my insomnia. Listening to a game in a language I didn't understand was very soothing, apparently, and I went from taking 3 to 4 hours a night to fall asleep, if I would at all, to falling asleep within 30 seconds of laying my head down. First college roommate rarely did laundry and would borrow my underwear, especially for dates, and return them dirty, unwashed. I told him in unequivocal terms to keep his hands off my junk, but he'd borrow whatever he needed anyway. That is a hard no. I almost beat a roommate's ass after finding out he was wearing boots of mine, for went home barefoot. Wait, you seriously want me to take them off right now? They're coming off your feet in less than 2 minutes, depends if you're conscious or unconscious. Guys' feet reek too, and they were $120 combat boots. I used to live with 2 strippers. Needless to say, they weren't early risers. One Sunday morning, we get a knock at the front door. Hey, Jehovah's Witnesses. So, Kay goes to the door, and invites them in for coffee. While buck naked. Kay is pretty, impressive naked. Built like China in her prime, lots of tattoos and piercings. Needless to say, they left, quickly. And we never had missionaries at our door again. Came home from my first day of classes to poop everywhere. Toilet seat, tile, bath mat, toilet paper holder, sink, carpet. Had a long discussion. Not acceptable. Happened again. Took 6 weeks to get her out. I taught a roommate how to boil water. Iced tea was the first thing, other than sandwiches and salads, that she had ever made. I had to teach someone what an acceptable price for everyday groceries are. She had never done a day of grocery shopping in her life, and I was astonished when she came back with a relatively smallish loaf of bread that cost over £7 and she thought that was reasonable price, among other things such as gourmet beef etc. She spent around £80 to £90 for her first week of food shopping for herself at uni, and complained to me about how it didn't look like her maintenance loans were going to cover her food shopping. Nowadays she is better at getting deals for food than I am. I had a college roommate who was obsessed with CSI. She had a CSI pillow and sheets/blankets. She refused to turn on any lights and kept all blinds shut. She hated light and would sigh loudly if I would turn the lights on to do anything. I went to college right around when you needed a college email to make a Facebook, and she would tell me that Facebook is how they spy on you. She said she would never have a MySpace or anything of the like. She might have been right on that one, and she would always say I was a sheep and that I would have my identity stolen by them. My other roommate, we were 4 with 2 bedrooms and a common area, was extremely loud at all hours, and if you ever asked her to keep it down, even very politely, she would purposely start doing cartwheels and banging on things and singing. She claimed to be Jay Leno's niece. One more, I had a roommate that slept with a new guy every weekend and we could hear her loudly through the wall. We would tell her we heard her and she vehemently denied every time that she slept with anyone. Come on, girl. I had a couple as roommates, and she was, well, saying she was loud was an understatement. It's not like hearing them through the wall. You could hear her outside the damn apartment. It got annoying quick. She was majorly depressed. She worked a lot and for very little money, so she would mostly come home and lock herself in her room. At some point, she stopped cleaning or doing laundry. She worked at a childcare center, and at some point contracted impetigo. Gross, but treatable. She wouldn't get it treated, however, because it was too expensive. So I lived in fear I would contract it, let alone the other kids she was watching. She told her work it was being treated and was no longer contagious. They just believed her. She had these massive, crusty patches all over her face and just didn't care. After 5 whole weeks, she finally went to the doctor. Things were tense until her mom came to visit a few weeks later and convinced her to be committed. She had been sending suicidal messages to her mom every day for weeks. Her mom paid her rent for the next 3 months until the lease was up, and she moved back home. Never spoke again. Hope she is doing better. I had a roommate for several years who was a decent guy, quiet, cleaned up after himself, respectful. The poor guy's life was terrible. He dropped out of high school at age 17. Then he started selling weed, which he was arrested for by an undercover cop. Being uneducated, he ended up with a felony on his record, permanently. Throw on top of that, having a child and things not working out with his baby mama, so he owed child support. This guy was working as a dishwasher at restaurants for $10 an hour, probably less. This was from 2010 to 2015 when we were roommates. He had no car, and the closest bus route to where we lived was a mile walk, uphill, from our apartment. He did this every day. One day I was talking to my dad, who loves to ride bicycles and has many, if one could be offered to my friend. He put some new pedals on a road bike of his, that's all he had, and I gave it to my friend. On the third day after he had been given the bike, I was awoken randomly to knocks on my bedroom door and some mumbled speech. I open my door and there's my roommate, with his hand up to his face, covered in blood and maybe a tooth in there. He had placed his bag of clothes on the handlebar, and the drag from the front tire pulled the bag in and caused him to faceplant on concrete. I remember taking him to the hospital, and he asked me to look at his mouth. Good God! This has a happy ending, or something like it. After this injury, he had enough with walking to the bus, so he got a second job, and began saving up to buy a car. For the first few weeks though, this guy was walking to the bus, and then working a 16+ hour day. There was a gap between jobs, where he couldn't rest much, so was probably getting 4 hours of sleep a night. He was saving funds, and due to his child support, he could only eat banquet $1 frozen dinners. All day. That's all he had was one of those. He eventually got the car and his quality of life got marginally better before he parted ways. He ended up moving in with family and closer to bus lines. Maybe not the most extraordinarily interesting story ever, but nonetheless, what that guy went through, I can't imagine. He used to tell me when he was walking home at night, he often contemplated stepping into oncoming traffic. Thankfully he never did. After we both left the apartment and went our separate ways, we kept in touch. However, he frequently had phone issues when we lived together, and had several different hashes in 5 years. I reached out to him to check in 5 years ago and never heard back. I hope he's okay. Freshman year of college, I was randomly assigned a roommate to share a tiny room, 11x15, I think. I was a quiet comp-sci student from the San Francisco area who liked video games and D&D. My assigned roommate was a huge mechanical engineering major from the South who liked his lifted truck, dip tobacco, and getting drunk as often as possible. Needless to say, the next 6 months were not fun. He left his spit cups everywhere, constantly played loud country music, and messed around with my stuff, including scratching a nasty slur into my Office Space-esque stapler. As the year went on he seemed to get worse, probably due to finding a group of like-minded people in the dorms. Long story short, he was kicked out of the dorms about 2 weeks before the spring break. He and another guy went on a rampage through the dorm with airsoft guns shooting the little whiteboard on everyone's door. For some reason, though, he was allowed to stay until the break. I stupidly left for home before he did, and when I got back my very nice gaming PC was missing. I reported it missing, and told the police exactly where I thought it was, at his new place. They apparently searched it, and though they didn't find my computer, they found enough other stolen goods to get him expelled from school. Thankfully, my replacement roommate was a very nice, quiet guy. And the rest of the year went well. This is my only roommate story. After this, I swore never again. A childhood friend and her boyfriend. He was a chef, line cook at a chain restaurant, who would cook mediocre meals when the urge took him, which took damn near every pot and pan in the kitchen to make, and fricked off without cleaning up after himself. He also had a kitten really, who he never bought food for, so I had to feed it because I'm not a monster. She was an unemployed student, like me, who would use the cups from my dinner set as ashtrays, and load up a single plate of food, take it to her room, eat from it throughout the day, and keep it. Rinse, repeat every day until we were out of plates. I said I'd clean them if she just brought them back to the kitchen, but nah. I'd have to wait until she was out then go get them, complete with moldering food remnants. Eventually, my boyfriend joined our happy little household, and I started setting boundaries because it was no longer 2-to-1. That led to a blow-up screaming match, and me and him moving out. My only regret is that I didn't take the cat. I own a house and rent out rooms in it. Right after I first got it I was pretty strapped for cash and needed to rent out both of the rooms as quickly as possible, and unfortunately it didn't align with the usual lease start dates in town, university and college, so January, May and September are the usual. I had a lady come, mid-30s, wanted the furnished room. I felt it was a little off. Why does this grown woman have no furniture? My friends basically scolded me for being judgmental. Maybe she just got out of a bad relationship. Maybe she is new to the city, etc., so I rented to her. Turns out she had just gotten out of jail for dealing meth. And honestly, she was better than the other one. She did her meth business in hotel rooms. She paid cash on time. She wasn't home a lot. One time she left her little meth scale in the living room, and it inspired me to get a food scale, which was a game changer in my weight loss journey. A serving of spaghetti is pathetically small and I had no idea until I waited. Ended up making up a lie to get her to leave when she brought a strung out friend home in the middle of the night because that's a little much for me. Meanwhile the other looked good on paper. She was an early childhood educator on the supply list. Except she was an alcoholic and heavy weed smoker. She never went to work because she never woke up in time. She never paid rent on time. She brought home a random group from the bar in the middle of the night on a Wednesday. She would take 3-hour-long baths in my only bathroom, and was just not my type of roommate. Finally kicked her out when she started stealing booze from me. I caught her, warned her. She did it again a few days later. I called her out on it again, gave her a month's notice to move out, and she had the nerve to ask for the rest of the booze. So comparatively, the meth one was better. I lived in a house with 2 other guys. Let's call them Steve and Jake. At the time, we were all working pretty well-paid jobs, so we decided to hire a cleaner to come and spruce up our man den twice a week. I don't remember how, but we ended up with an absolutely drop-dead gorgeous young Polish girl who spoke no English whatsoever. We had to get our Polish neighbor to tell her what our expectations were, etc. For the first month or two, everything was going great and we were happy with her. She'd usually come in when we were all out working so we'd never see her, but she'd leave the place looking immaculate. Then, out of the blue, her work quality went to absolute shit and it became apparent that she was either not doing anything or she wasn't even going to the house anymore. One night, after a few weeks of her shitty work, I'm talking to Steve and Jake and I suggested we fire her. Jake was all for it but Steve, for some reason, was dead against it. Instead, he suggested we have our neighbor give her a warning. I just kind of said whatever and let him take care of it. Fast forward another month, I'm at work and I suddenly get sick, so I go home early. I walk in the door and lo and behold I see Steve, ass naked on the sofa, hands and feet tied up, and wearing a ball gag, with the cleaner riding him whilst wearing an extremely revealing maid's outfit. The look on both their faces when I walked in was freaking hilarious. And even though I was sick I died laughing knowing why her work quality sucked so bad. It turned out he used to come home every lunchtime when she was there, bang her senseless, then drop her off at her next job. Long story short, he got her pregnant, and she still lives with him to this day with their little girl. My college roommate didn't know how to do laundry before we started school. We had a community washer and dryer on our floor. Probably the 3rd week of school, I went down to get a soda from the machine and I walk in and there are bubbles 4 inches deep on the floor. My roommate walks in behind me to check his laundry. He had put 3 full scoops of Tide in the washer with his load. I had to take him to an off-campus laundromat to wash all of the excess soap out of his clothes. My wife had a roommate whose clothes smelled bad all the time. But they would do laundry together, so they knew that she washed her clothes, but they smelled like they weren't. Until one day when they were shopping together, and the roommate said that she had to buy laundry detergent, and then picked up some Downy soft fabric softener. My wife asked her if she was also going to get detergent, and the roommate replied, "I just did." My wife tried to convince her that fabric softener is not soap, and wouldn't clean your clothes, and the roommate was adamant. "This is what I've always used, and it works great." My wife tried to be nice about how it didn't work, and that her clothes didn't smell good after a day, when the Downy scent would wear off, but nothing she said made a difference. I hope that when the roommate got married 12 years ago, her husband was able to convince her to use actual detergent for her clothes. A few years back my former roommate and a let our downstairs neighbor move in with us because the guy he was living with had taken up a new habit. He'd befriended the pigeons that hung out on the rooftop outside his bedroom window and eventually started taking them inside and caring for them like pets. Shit got real dirty real quick. He started watching me from dark corners of the house at night if I was in the common areas. Super freaking creepy. I have a few stories. The first involves this guy I'll call Sean. Sean owned a small house in rural NC outside of a larger city. I was looking for a place and Sean offered me his tiny camper trailer on his property as he already had people renting out the other rooms in his house but still wanted to help me out. I was having a time in my personal life. So I moved into the trailer and paid like $200 per month for the trailer and access to the house. The other roommates were paying I think $300 per month each. Well, one thing led to another and I started dating one of the roommates, let's call him Ben. So Ben and I are hanging out, it seems all good, I'm spending more nights than not in Ben's room. Sean had even encouraged Ben and me to date so I thought he was happy for us. One day Sean came home in a blind rage and kicked me out of the house. I was sitting in the living room watching TV with the other roommates. He locked me out of the house and disconnected the electricity from the house to the tiny trailer. In January, I asked him to talk to me about what was going on and he point-blank refused to acknowledge my existence but didn't seem to have much of a problem with Ben. Finally, after 3 days, he told me what he was pissed about. Cooking myself dinner and not offering him any. Not buying nice beer for him. Having a relationship with Ben. I moved out as quickly as I could and cut all ties with Sean. Ben and I dated for another year after that but are no longer together. Senior year of college, I lived with 8 other students in a house, girls upstairs and boys downstairs. One time the boys were really rowdy, so I went downstairs to check it out, and this girl from my literature class was beating in their fridge with a fire extinguisher. I think I've lost the ability to be surprised after that year. I don't understand the meaning of was beating in their fridge. Was she beatboxing? Was she getting beaten up? Was she attacking the fridge? It would be really cool if somebody could help me with that smile. She was using a fire extinguisher to hit the refrigerator so hard that the door had large dents in it. My old roommate, who is also my best friend, would put out crystals or rocks or something on the fence outside during full moons to get recharged. Which is insanely out of character for him. I thought it was hilarious but I never made fun of it or questioned it. Not exactly a roommate, had to live at friend's place for 2 weeks, and he lived with a roommate. Anyway, one morning I wake up to find my friend missing. He had taken stuff too, so I ask his roommate where he is. We didn't know each other at all, and he said he went to different city for a job. So, few days pass by and one night I was alone. I hear the doorbell ring. I open it. It's the roommate covered in blood. I just ask what happened, and he just said he passed out and fell into rose bushes. He then gets naked and I have to clean him up and sent to bed. After that we became friends. The university cycling team had its own floor in the dorm my freshman year. Cyclists can be strange, and my roommate, John, was no exception. He grew up Quaker. His parents had recently divorced and his mom was in the process of building a house, mansion, really, in the immediate DC area next door to her ex-husband, and the houses were identical. They were filthy rich and he got whatever he wanted. I should mention, he specifically came to this school to race mountain bikes, but he'd never raced bicycles at all, or even owned a mountain bike. He showed up to school on the first day with a $5,000 road bike and a $7,000 mountain bike. Anytime he went shopping, he almost always used change. He had the largest jar of change I'd ever seen. When I say he was odd, he was just not quite there. He was taking 70 milligrams Vyvanse, but he couldn't pay attention to anything for an extended period of time. So, he'd always interrupt conversations with some out-of-this-world thought, and he frequently left the room having forgot to wear something like socks or a shirt. Kinda hard to explain because there wasn't really anything wrong with him, he was just never quite there. As an example, on a team trip one time we went to Cracker Barrel. He was very quiet for 45 minutes or so as everyone is talking about the race we just went to. All of a sudden, in a manner that everyone in the building can hear, he articulates a thought that has occurred to him: everyone here is old except for us. Certainly true, just no need to say it out loud, you know. While writing this, it has occurred to me that the amphetamines he'd been prescribed since childhood probably took a toll on his brain. Anyways, he was honestly pretty fun to have around because you never quite knew what was going to happen. We roomed together off campus again sophomore year with 2 other guys on the cycling team. The summer between sophomore and junior year, he was supposed to study abroad in Austria for 2 weeks. Me and the other roommates joked, somewhat seriously, that it very well could be the last time we see John. If anyone was capable of getting lost abroad, it was him. A few weeks before the trip, he confided with us that he met an Italian girl online and he was hoping to meet her while abroad. As he was beginning to pack, he showed us a selfie she just sent him. She appeared to be a passenger in a car and wearing a seatbelt. He was certain that, because she was looking out the window, it was a desperate plea for help and he needed to save her. On his second day abroad, I received a call from his mother. I knew exactly what was on the other line. I put the phone call on speaker so the roommates could receive the same information that was certain to follow. "This is Carrot. Have you heard from John?" No. He's in Austria. The school called and he's gone missing. They can't find him." So we told his mom about the girl. The mom ended up hiring a PI who was able to track him down 5 days later roaming the streets of some small town on the Italy border. He was expelled from the university and I never saw him again. Hired movers got his stuff from our apartment. He had totally ruined the study abroad trip for everyone. We asked him what happened but we never got a meaningful response. He's sent me a couple of incredibly random Facebook messages over the years. Once, he messaged me, "What degrees did you achieved?" I responded and he messaged me back 6 months later, That's really cool that you were successful. Who else do I know that is successful? Had a friend who turned out to be a man-child. Not just immature, but at 32 years of age he would not do basic things for himself. Things like brushing his teeth, cutting his nails, cooking, cleaning, showering, etc. He tried to cook once, which involved him dumping 3 boxes of pasta into one pot and tossing in ground beef and shredded cheese. He smacked his food, his hair was matted because he wouldn't take care of it. He moved in with my partner and I because he wanted to find opportunities for education and a better job. He was with us for 8 months and in that time maybe sent out 2 job applications. I told him to stick to community colleges but he insisted on some overpriced proprietary school and asked if he could stay with us for the year and a half it would take to finish the program. I said absolutely not. He was also incredibly immature. Like he definitely peaked in high school for a reason. And if you look up weaponized incompetence I'm pretty sure his photo is next to it. Every time my partner I cooked he'd stare until we offered him some of it. He smoked my weed, ate our food and never replaced it, wandered around in his boxers, and never left the apartment. If you tried to show him simple things like how the coffee maker worked he'd freak out and say he couldn't do it. When he moved out, and back in with his mom, we celebrated. My last 2 roommates were a married man and his side chick. We lived in a shared house and the man recommended his girlfriend to the landlords after another roommate left. I had no say in it. His wife lived and worked in Germany while we live in the US so he easily got away with it. They were cool with me but it was very uncomfortable to watch, especially since I met his wife when she came to visit him, before I knew about the girlfriend. He was so much meaner to his wife too. He'd complain about her cooking and make her cry but with the girlfriend he was Mr. Nice and Mr. Helpful. I don't know if the girlfriend knew he had a wife or not. Husband's roommates from hell. When me and my husband were just dating her moved into a 3BR apt with 3 roommates. A really good friend of his and his GF and another single dude they all worked with. They signed an 18-month lease. It was horrible. The couple, his friend and the guy's GF, started getting into hardcore drugs after a really tragic event happened in their lives. They would have sketchy people over all the time, made huge messes, rarely cleaned anything and would get into shouting matches at 2 a.m. almost every night. The power was in the GF's name, and they almost always were late paying the bill. Eventually both got fired from their jobs and after spending all their money of drugs stopped paying rent. Single guy was the most disgusting human I have ever met. He would almost never shower and when he did, he didn't use anything but water. No shampoo, no soap. He was an avid gamer and would be up for days on end playing games in his room. He would leave food out to rot, piss in bottles etc. and never cleaned his clothes. At one point there was a cat in the apt, long story, and single dude went to work. People were complaining he stank, so he blamed that the cat had pissed on his work shirt. I have so much to say about that, but his logic was the cat pissed on his shirt, but he put it on anyway? There was a full washer and dryer in the apt. No excuse. When the couple stopped paying rent so did he. Finally, the couple broke up so they both moved out and the single dude decided living on his own was too hard and moved back in with his mom. All this went down in under 4 months. Luckily the apt complex let my husband transfer to 1BR in the same complex without breaking his lease. I moved in with him then, so at least that was good. He and I went into the 3BR with hazmat suits and scrubbed it for like 2 days. Still didn't get the deposit back, can't say I blame them. That apt was fricked. Husband's friend ended up getting into meth, dealing, cooking and doing. Was arrested and went to jail for over a year. He is clean and sober now and doing really well. So, a little bit of a happy ending.